The Canadian real estate market stands at the crossroads of a severe financial crisis, potentially eroding the middle class and reshaping the nation's economic landscape. This analysis delves into the mechanisms already set in motion to trigger the largest wave of financial strain in decades, focusing specifically on the most indebted urban centers. Stop! Imagine half the homes on your street being put up for emergency auction. This is not a scene from a movie, this is the reality Canada is heading towards in 2026. We are talking about the Renewal Wall, a financial time bomb set to blow up the affordability of thousands of families. Interest rates have already eaten into your income, and the coming payment shock is not just a budget issue, it is a survival issue. In this deep dive, we will unpack the devastating mechanics of affordability stacking and reveal the 10 most vulnerable Canadian cities. If you hold a mortgage, you cannot afford to ignore this. Hit like now, and join us as we dive into the truth no one wants to talk about. The core threat is the Renewal Wall, an unprecedented synchronized mortgage maturity event. From 2020 to 2022, in the era of ultra-low interest rates, quantitative easing and near-zero key rates, Canadians accessed massive mortgages at fixed rates of only about 2%, 2.5%. This was the period of debt-fueled wealth illusion, a false perception that low borrowing costs were permanent, reinforced by central bank intervention and irrational expectations. According to Bank of Canada estimates, the total value of mortgages set to mature in the 2025 to 2026 period is expected to exceed $400 billion, concentrated primarily in major urban areas where the debt-to-income (DTI) ratio was already irrationally high. Now, as these 5-year contracts mature in a synchronized fashion, homeowners face a completely new reality. They are refinancing at much higher rates, ranging from 4.5% to 5% or even higher, effectively increasing their borrowing cost by more than 100%. This sudden shift creates payment shock, a term describing the abrupt increase in the monthly payment, often ranging from $1,500 to $2,500 or more, depending on the original loan size and amortization stage. The impact across the mortgage life cycle is uneven. Newer borrowers, less than 5 years into amortization, face the biggest shock because the majority of their payment is interest. The strain is particularly evident for those who opted for variable rate mortgages with fixed payments, VRMFPs, dubbed the financial time bomb. When rates rise while payments are fixed, the excess interest is added to the principal, leading to negative amortization, meaning your loan balance grows after each payment. Negative amortization modeling. Assume a $700,000 mortgage at 2.5% initially. When the rate climbs to 5%, if the payment is held fixed, approximately 60–80% of that payment now only covers a fraction of the interest, and the shortfall is capitalized into the principal. Data suggests that over 15% of Canada's total mortgages and nearly 50% of VRMFPs had reached a negative amortization state by late 2024. For these borrowers, upon renewal, they face not only a higher interest rate, but also a higher principal balance than they started with, potentially causing their payments to jump by over 40%, making the renewal wall steeper and insurmountable for the middle class. This financial shock is compounded by the phenomenon of affordability stacking, a lethal combination of 3 simultaneous burdens. 1. The direct mortgage shock. DOI, persistent inflation. Food, energy, transportation, childcare costs. And 3. Rising ownership costs, property taxes, and especially soaring home insurance due to climate risk. These 3 layers of cost deplete household disposable income, leading to severe cuts in discretionary spending. From a behavioral psychology perspective, this stress is amplified by herd mentality and anchoring bias. In 2020 to 2022, buyers anchored their expectations to 2% rates, and the scarcity belief, FOMO, drove excessive borrowing. When the renewal wall appears, the severe disappointment comes from the collapse of this expectation. Market sentiment shifts from greed to fear, leading to widespread distressed selling, triggering the forced selling mechanism. Studies indicate that when homeowners lose more than 20% of their home equity, the psychological and financial pressure to sell becomes irresistible, creating a contagion effect across the wider economy. Labor market instability, as stressed borrowers seek extra work or are forced to relocate from expensive urban centers, and retail. Service sector distress as cuts in household discretionary spending damage small businesses and retail, potentially causing a deeper than anticipated consumer recession. Market analysis shows that the risk is not uniform but concentrated in major urban centers where the house price to income disconnect is most severe. This analysis uses assumed average DTI and LTV, loan-to-value, ratios at the time of borrowing, 2020 to 2022, to illustrate the destructive potential. Metropolis, equivalent to Toronto, is ground zero, with an estimated DTI over 550% for 2021 first-time buyers. It holds the largest absolute volume of debt, and the stress is pervasive even in high-income industries due to the irrational debt-to-income ratio. Harbor City, equivalent to Vancouver, is the symbol of mathematical unaffordability, with an estimated average DTI over 600%. The combination of elite-level house prices, inflated by foreign capital, with average wages insufficient to sustain the payment increase, is the core threat. Steelport, equivalent to Hamilton, is the suburban bubble, where buyers took on massive debt, displaced from Toronto, with lower local incomes, facing the worst renewal shock in Ontario, exacerbated by a high ratio of VRMFPs. Borderland, equivalent to Surrey, harbors multi-generational family risk, where multiple income streams are strained, simultaneously upon renewal, creating exponentially spreading default risk. Capital City, equivalent to Ottawa, is a fixed-wage time bomb, where public service employment stability is a weakness when house prices surge, leaving residents inflexible to cope with high heating and interest costs. Lakeview, equivalent to Kelowna, has a fragile financial structure, with an economy reliant on seasonal tourism unable to support high housing prices, and annual wildfire risk pushing insurance premiums up significantly, depleting available home equity. Oil City, equivalent to Calgary, is seeing an interest rate whiplash, where aggressive borrowing confidence led to significant difficulty as rates rose, compounded by high winter energy bills. Northern Gateway, equivalent to Edmonton, is the quiet risk market, where families pushed their borrowing to the limit based on oil service stability, facing severe utility costs during prolonged, harsh winters. Atlantic Charm, equivalent to Halifax, conceals the harshness of affordability stacking, where fixed-income jobs fail to keep pace with soaring house prices, coupled with high heating and Atlantic storm insurance risk. Finally, Prairie Hub, equivalent to Winnipeg, is an affordability anchor broken, where house prices have surged too far beyond the local average wage, and the extreme cold increases heating costs to a penalty level. Crucially, this dramatic perspective must be juxtaposed with real data. The Bank of Canada and CMHC confirm the renewal event is serious, but they believe rates will remain at a manageable threshold, around 3.5%, 4.3% by 2026. However, skeptical analysts argue these forecasts may underestimate the cascading effect of collapsing confidence and forced selling. While Canada's major banks, the Big Six, are better regulated post-2008, the risk is not immediate systemic collapse but rather profit erosion and a surge in non-performing loans. Banks face two major issues. 1. High-risk mortgages, especially VRMFPs with negative amortization. To avoid mass foreclosures, banks are quietly allowing extended amortization up to 30 to 40 years. This is a debt deferral mechanism, creating zombie debt, interest-only loans, on bank books and increasing long-term systemic risk. 2. Commercial real estate, CRE debt. This is another time bomb. With higher rates and falling office demand, numerous maturing CRE loans could face default, particularly in Toronto and Vancouver, forcing banks to provision for significant losses, straining credit markets. Historical comparative analysis shows that the Canadian crisis, while different from the 2008 U.S. subprime crisis, bears strong resemblance to the Nordic mortgage crisis, Sweden, Finland, in the early 1990 seconds, where uncontrolled inflation and sudden rate hikes following credit liberalization led to widespread liquidity loss and equity strain, forcing painful government intervention. The lesson is that even with solid banking systems, a consumer debt and confidence collapse can cause a deep recession. This crisis is a direct reflection of decades of policy failure to address housing supply and manage debt. The long-term maintenance of ultra-low rates sent the wrong signal. The current government faces a major dilemma. Intervention, socialization of losses. Offering relief measures risks fueling inflation and encouraging future risky borrowing behavior, moral hazard. Conversely, non-intervention, system integrity. Letting the market self-correct preserves the financial system's integrity but sacrifices a significant portion of the Canadian middle class, a politically and socially agonizing choice. The final truth remains: house prices have completely decoupled from real income. The crisis is not just about numbers, but about social cost and intergenerational inequity. The activation of the forced selling mechanism will trigger a massive wealth transfer from the leveraged middle class to institutional investors, large pension funds, and cash-rich investors. This exacerbates socioeconomic polarization and severely erodes the Canadian dream of homeownership. This is a crisis of economic sovereignty for the middle class. Analysts predict this strain will lead to a further tightening of lending standards, making it even harder for future homebuyers, even those with good incomes, to access the market. Essentially, this crisis is the official end of the era of cheap money and the collapse of the illusion that homeownership is a guaranteed path to prosperity for all Canadians. The forced selling mechanism is inevitable for a significant portion of over-leveraged borrowers. The crisis is not a future threat, it is already baked in. This is not the time for panic, but for action. The Renewal Wall is a scheduled event. We will continue to provide detailed market analysis, closely tracking delinquency data and negative amortization rates. If you are facing mortgage renewal, seek professional financial advice immediately and plan strategically before the pressure of forced selling weighs down the market. Its severity will be measured not just by the number of foreclosures, but by the erosion of confidence and wealth of the Canadian middle class in the coming years. If you found this analysis valuable, hit like and share immediately to warn others. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates on interest rate forecasts and strategies for surviving this mortgage crisis. See you in the next video.